The Searchers, 1956, remains one of the greatest westerns of all time, but behind its legendary status lies a heartbreaking reality: many of its stars have left us. In this video, we take a look at 36 actors from the film who have sadly passed away, remembering their incredible performances and the legacies they left behind. Some met tragic fates, while others lived long, fulfilling lives. Stay with us as we honor these Hollywood icons and uncover the stories behind their final days. John Wayne portrayed Ethan Edwards, a hardened and vengeful Civil War veteran. In 1956, John Wayne was 49 years old, having started filming at 48. A man of towering presence both on and off screen, Wayne embodied the rugged masculinity of the American West, but his own life was far from the heroism he projected. Ethan Edwards is a man consumed by hatred, driven by his obsessive need to reclaim what was lost, but in many ways, Wayne himself was just as haunted. Despite his immense success, his personal life was a battlefield of broken marriages and estranged children. He married 3 times, each ending in bitter divorce, with his children often caught in the crossfire of his relentless career and his inability to prioritize family. His drinking and smoking habits led to severe health complications, culminating in lung cancer that claimed his life on June 11, 1979, at the age of 72.
I'll take a look. Keep after the others.
You want us to fire a shot just in
No, nor build bonfires, nor beat drums. I'll meet you on the far side.
Vera Miles took on the role of Lori Jorgensen, Martin's love interest. In 1956, Vera Miles was 27 years old, having started filming at 26. On screen, Lori represents love, warmth, and the possibility of a peaceful future, but Vera Miles' real life was filled with personal struggles and missed opportunities. She was famously set to become one of Alfred Hitchcock's biggest stars, but a pregnancy derailed her leading role in Vertigo, leading to a bitter fallout with the director and a career that never reached its full potential. Her personal life was just as turbulent, married 4 times, each relationship ended in heartbreak, with infidelity, disillusionment, and emotional distance tearing them apart. Her children were often caught between her career and her personal troubles, and she spent much of her later years living in reclusion, avoiding the spotlight she once sought. Now, in 2025, at 95 years old, she lives in quiet obscurity, long forgotten by the industry she once dreamed of conquering, carrying the weight of what could have been.
But Lord, that's your own good horse, that Sweet Face.
You take him and welcome. But don't you count on finding me here with...
Jeffrey Hunter played Martin Pauly, a young man adopted by the Edwards family. Jeffrey Hunter was 29 years old in 1956, having begun filming at 30. Unlike the steadfast and determined Martin, Hunter's real life was riddled with disappointment and misfortune. Despite early promise, his career never fully reached the heights expected, as he found himself typecast and passed over for major roles. His personal life was equally turbulent. Married 3 times, his relationships were marred by instability, with his second marriage to model Dusty Bartlett ending in an acrimonious divorce that left him emotionally shattered. Tragedy struck in his final years when, in 1969, he suffered a massive stroke followed by a fall at his home, fracturing his skull. He lingered in a state of unconsciousness for days before succumbing to his injuries on May 27, 1969, at the age of 42. His death was a cruel irony for a man who had once been seen as a bright star in Hollywood, a reminder that not all promising careers have a happy ending.
And Martha? And Martha!
Natalie Wood portrayed Debbie Edwards in The Searchers in 1956 at age 18. Debbie represented innocence lost, a child stolen from her world and forced into another. Natalie's real life was similarly shaped by forces beyond her control. Pushed into acting as a child, she lived under the constant pressure of Hollywood expectations. Her career flourished with West Side Story, 1961, and Splendor in the Grass, 1961, but her personal life was tumultuous. She married Robert Wagner twice, their relationship marked by infidelity, jealousy, and emotional distance. Though she had a daughter, Courtney, she battled deep insecurities and a lifelong fear of water. That fear became a tragic reality on November 29, 1981, when she drowned under mysterious circumstances near Catalina Island at age 43. Found floating in the cold darkness, bruised and lifeless, her death remains shrouded in controversy, a chilling end to a life haunted by fear and uncertainty.
I've come now, Debbie.
These are my people. Und mehr. Go. Go, Martin, please.
Ward Bond played Reverend Captain Samuel Johnston Clayton, a preacher and Texas Ranger. Ward Bond began filming at 53 years old in 1956. A forceful and charismatic presence, Bond was known for his larger-than-life personality, but behind the bravado lay a man plagued by deep-seated anger and self-destruction. His political outspokenness made him a divisive figure in Hollywood, and his heavy drinking often led to violent outbursts, alienating those closest to him. Never able to find true happiness in his personal life, his marriage to Doris Sellers Childs was a cold and distant union, lacking warmth and affection. His health rapidly deteriorated due to years of alcohol abuse, and on November 5, 1960, he suffered a massive heart attack and died at the age of 57. His sudden death was a grim reminder that even the strongest men can fall, leaving behind an unfinished legacy and an industry that quickly moved on without him.
I ain't seen you since the surrender. Come to think of it, I didn't see you at the surrender.
Don't believe in surrenders. No, I still got my saber, Reverend. Didn't turn.
John Qualen played Lars Jorgensen in The Searchers in 1956 at age 57. His character embodied the warmth and resilience of immigrants striving to build a life in the harsh American frontier. Off-screen, however, Qualen's life was marked by quiet disappointments and a struggle for recognition. A gifted character actor, he delivered memorable performances in The Grapes of Wrath, 1940, Casablanca, 1942, and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962, yet he remained in the background, overshadowed by leading stars. Though married to Pearl Larson for decades, their relationship lacked passion, more of a quiet companionship than a deep love. They had children, but as work consumed him, he grew emotionally distant from his family. As Hollywood's golden age faded, so did his opportunities, and he spent his later years in solitude, battling health issues and financial struggles. By the time he passed away from heart failure on September 12, 1987, at age 87, he was largely forgotten, his name lost in the long history of cinema.
Come on back and read it, please.
Mama, here, you read the letter. Charlie, my wife...
Henry Brandon played Scar in The Searchers in 1956 at age 44. His portrayal of the fearsome Comanche chief embodied vengeance and tragedy, mirroring the struggles in his own life. Born Heinrich von Kleinbach in Germany, he was forced to reinvent himself in Hollywood, changing his name to avoid anti-German prejudice. Despite a long career with roles in Babes in Toyland, 1934, The Ten Commandments, 1956, and Assault on Precinct 13, 1976, true stardom eluded him. Privately, he struggled with his identity and personal relationships. He never married, and his long-term relationship with Mark Herron, Judy Garland's ex-husband, remained a secret due to societal pressures. As he aged, his roles became scarcer, and loneliness set in. He suffered a fatal heart attack on February 15, 1990, at age 77, dying in quiet obscurity, his name fading from public memory. A man who spent his life playing powerful figures, but never truly found power over his own fate.
Are all those his wives?
2 sons killed by white men. For each son, I take many.
Olive Carey portrayed Mrs. Jorgensen in The Searchers in 1956 at age 60. Her character was a strong, nurturing presence, reflecting the quiet but essential role of frontier women. In real life, Olive spent much of her career in the shadow of her husband, legendary Western actor Harry Carey Sr., though she appeared in films like The Long Gray Line, 1955, and The Alamo, 1960, she was never truly acknowledged as a star in her own right. Her marriage, while long-lasting, was more of a partnership than a romance, and after her husband's death in 1947, she struggled to find her own identity. Her son, actor Harry Carey Jr., followed in his father's footsteps, but their relationship was distant, burdened by unspoken resentments. As she aged, Hollywood no longer had roles for her, and she spent her later years in quiet obscurity. She died on March 13, 1988, at age 92, alone and overlooked, her legacy a mere footnote in the history of Western cinema.
It just so happens we be Texicans. Texican is nothing but a human man way out on a limb. This year and next, maybe for 100 more.
Ken Curtis played Charlie McCory in The Searchers in 1956 at the age of 40, having started filming at 39. Charlie is a stubborn yet comedic suitor whose rivalry with Martin Pauly adds a touch of humor to the film, though beneath his bluster lies a deep loneliness. Curtis originally found fame as a singer before transitioning to acting, but despite his success in Gunsmoke, he struggled with typecasting, rarely finding major roles outside of westerns. His personal life was marked by turmoil. His marriage to Barbara Ford, daughter of director John Ford, ended in divorce, strained by career conflicts and her father's interference. He had no children, something he later admitted left a void in his life. Financial troubles followed him into old age, worsened by failed investments. In his final years, he battled heart disease and withdrew from the public eye. He died on April 28, 1991, at the age of 74 from a heart attack.
I'll read it.
So he married a Comanche squaw. Ha ha ha. My God.
Antonio Moreno played Emilio Gabriel Fernandez y Figueroa in The Searchers in 1956 at the age of 69, having started filming at 64. Emilio is a noble and respected rancher who briefly aids Ethan and Martin, representing an oasis of decency in a cruel world. Moreno himself once enjoyed a life of glamour, rising to fame as a silent film heartthrob, but his thick Spanish accent doomed his career with the arrival of talkies. Reduced to character roles, he never regained his former status, and Hollywood largely forgot him. His personal life was equally tragic. His marriage to heiress Daisy Canfield ended in heartbreak when she died in a car accident in 1933. Moreno, devastated, never remarried and remained childless. By the 1950s, financial difficulties forced him to take whatever small roles he could find, and he spent his later years in near poverty. He passed away on February 15, 1967, at the age of 79 from a heart attack.
Buenas tardes, mi jefe. Caballeros, this is the great cicatrice. Watch his
Scar, huh?
Harry Carey Jr. portrayed Brad Jorgensen in The Searchers in 1956 at the age of 35, having started filming at 34. Brad is a young, brave, and idealistic man who joins the search for Debbie but meets a sudden and brutal end, symbolizing the loss of youthful optimism. The son of silent film legend Harry Carey Sr., Carey Jr. spent much of his career living in his father's shadow, struggling to carve out his own identity. Despite appearing in numerous westerns, he was often relegated to supporting roles and never achieved true stardom. His marriage to Marilyn Fix endured, but his battles with alcoholism placed great strain on their relationship. They had 4 children, yet Carey Jr. often felt distant, unable to be the father he wished to be. As Hollywood moved on from classic westerns, his career declined, leaving him financially dependent on convention appearances and memoir sales. In his later years, he suffered from deteriorating health and faded into obscurity. He passed away on December 27, 2012, at the age of 91 from natural causes. Hank Wardens portrayed Mose Harper in The Searchers in 1956 at the age of 55, having started filming at 54. Mose is a kind but eccentric old man, often dismissed as foolish yet ultimately proving to be one of the film's most endearing characters. Warden's real life mirrored this sense of being overlooked. Despite a career spanning decades, he was almost always cast in small, quirky roles, never achieving widespread recognition. His brief marriage to dancer Elsie Pearsons ended quickly, and he remained largely alone for the rest of his life. Though he continued working into old age, he lived modestly, never earning the wealth or respect many of his peers enjoyed. In his later years, he suffered from dementia, losing his ability to recognize friends and colleagues. By the early 1990s, he was placed in a nursing home, where he spent his final days in confusion, visited by few. He passed away on December 6, 1992, at the age of 91, a forgotten relic of a bygone Hollywood.
My rocking chair. You promised me my rocking chair.
Where is Scar?
Ask him about Debbie. Is Debbie all right, Mose?
Dorothy Jordan played Martha Edwards in The Searchers, 1956, at the age of 50, having started filming at 49. Martha is a loving and gentle woman, devoted to her husband and children, yet her unspoken love for Ethan lingers in the film's subtext. In reality, Jordan's life was one of sacrifice and regret. She had been a rising star in the early 1930s, but her decision to marry filmmaker Marion C. Cooper effectively ended her career. Though their marriage lasted until his death, it was far from fulfilling. Cooper was domineering, and Jordan was expected to play the role of a supportive wife rather than pursue her ambitions. They had no children, and as she aged, she watched the Hollywood she had once known leave her behind. After Cooper's passing in 1973, she withdrew from public life, living in seclusion and grappling with the reality of a career lost to love. She died on December 7, 1988, at the age of 82, alone and largely forgotten by the industry she once dreamed of conquering.
Welcome home, Ethan.
Walter Coy played Aaron Edwards in The Searchers, 1956, at the age of 47, having started filming at 46. Aaron is a devoted family man whose brutal murder at the hands of the Comanche serves as the catalyst for Ethan's relentless quest. Coy's career began with promise, but he quickly became trapped in Western roles, struggling to break into more prestigious films. Hollywood was unkind to aging actors, and by the 1960s, he found himself with fewer opportunities, taking on minor television roles just to survive. His personal life was equally troubled. His first marriage ended in divorce, and his second marriage, though longer lasting, was deeply unhappy. He had 2 children, but his struggles with alcohol and financial instability created a rift between them. As his career faded, so did his health, and he spent his later years in relative obscurity, battling depression and alcoholism. On December 11, 1974, at the age of 65 due to heart failure, he was found dead in his small Los Angeles apartment.
8th Cherokee and the rest is Welsh and English. At least that's what they tell me.
Grown some.
Was Ethan found you, squalling under a sage clump after your folks had been met?
Pippa Scott played Lucy Edwards in The Searchers, 1956, at the age of 21, having started filming at 20. Lucy is young, hopeful, and filled with innocence before she meets a horrifying fate, further deepening the film's sense of tragedy. Scott came from Hollywood royalty, but the weight of expectations proved too much. Though she appeared in notable films and television shows, she never found the stardom she had envisioned. Her personal life was just as turbulent. She married once, but the relationship ended in divorce, and her son, whom she adored, eventually became distant. As the years went on, Scott grew disillusioned with the entertainment industry, turning to activism and independent projects, but success continued to elude her. She gradually withdrew from public life, her once bright career fading into memory. Now 89 in 2025, she lives a quiet and solitary life, carrying the weight of lost dreams and a past that feels increasingly distant.
Ma, I can't.
Lucy!
Lana Wood played the younger Debbie Edwards in The Searchers, 1956, at the age of 10, having started filming when she was only 9. Debbie, a child caught in the brutal world of frontier violence, is stolen from her family, her fate hanging in the balance between cultures and vengeance. For Lana, The Searchers marked the beginning of what should have been a glittering career, but the shadows of Hollywood were darker than the silver screen. Though she found fame in later years, notably as Plenty O'Toole and Diamonds Are Forever, 1971, she was forever eclipsed by her older sister, Natalie Wood, whose mysterious 1981 drowning cast an unshakable pall over Lana's life. Marriages came and went, 5 in total, each one ending in heartbreak, leaving her with one daughter, Evan. Financial ruin struck in later years, forcing her to live in a motel, relying on the kindness of strangers. In 2025, at 78 years old, she remains alive, but the weight of loss and poverty continues to haunt her.
Chris, go back! Go back, Chris! Go back! Chris! Go back! Go back, Chris! Chris, go back! Go back, Chris!
Patrick Wayne played Lieutenant Greenhill in The Searchers, 1956, at the age of 17, having started filming at 16. His character is a minor figure, symbolizing the presence of military authority in a lawless frontier. As the son of John Wayne, Patrick was expected to follow in his father's footsteps, but despite his efforts, he never achieved the same legendary status. Though he appeared in numerous films, including several with his father, he was often dismissed as riding on the Wayne name rather than earning success on his own. His personal life was similarly difficult. 2 marriages ended in divorce, and his relationships with his 4 children were strained, as he spent years chasing a career that never quite materialized. In his later years, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, forcing him into an early retirement. Now 85 in 2025, he lives in quiet obscurity, a man forever overshadowed by a father he could never surpass.
What information?
Maybe he's not far from here, holed up somewhere.
What makes you think he's not far from here?
Yesterday, one of our patrols picked up a man claims he was a prisoner with Scarlett only 2 days ago. Talks kind of crazy, but...
Ruth Clifford played the deranged woman at the fort in The Searchers, 1956, at the age of 56, a haunting figure symbolizing the psychological devastation of frontier life. Ruth herself had once been a celebrated beauty of the silent film era, starring in leading roles during the 1920s. However, as Hollywood's golden age shifted, so did her fortunes, relegating her to minor parts and uncredited appearances. Though she worked steadily, her presence in Hollywood grew increasingly invisible. Her personal life was equally melancholic. She married James Cornelius, but his early death left her widowed, and they had no children. She spent her later years in isolation, seldom seen in public, her name a forgotten relic of old Hollywood. As the years passed, her contributions to cinema faded into obscurity. On November 30th, 1998, she died at the age of 98, her passing barely making news, a quiet exit for a woman who had once been a star. Peter Mamakos portrayed Jerem Futterman in The Searchers in 1956 at age 38, playing a minor but sinister antagonist, a role fitting for a man whose career was defined by playing villains and outcasts. A prolific character actor, he appeared in Spartacus, 1960, and Escape from Alcatraz, 1979, yet Hollywood never saw him as leading man material. He spent decades scraping by, jumping between forgettable television roles, watching others achieve the fame he longed for. His marriage to Helen was filled with resentment, their relationship deteriorating as his career floundered. They had one daughter, Joanna, who distanced herself from him, embarrassed by his failures. In his later years, he suffered from dementia, the memories of his career slipping away just as Hollywood forgot him. He died on April 27, 2008, at age 89, in a nursing home, surrounded by strangers, his life reduced to fading photographs and old film reels no one watched anymore.
You sent me a letter.
Yeah?
About a dress.
Jack Pinnock played the sergeant at the fort in The Searchers in 1956 at the age of 61, having started filming at 59. His character represents the rigid discipline of military life, a reflection of his real-life service as a Marine in both World Wars. Pinnock's transition to Hollywood saw him typecast as a gruff military figure, rarely given lines of significance. Though he worked steadily in John Ford's stock company, he was never a leading man and lived in the shadows of greater stars. He married Gladys Heaney, and while they had 3 children, his long absences and stoic nature created an emotional distance between them. The horrors of war haunted him, and he struggled with nightmares and alcoholism, which further estranged him from his family. By the early 1960s, his health declined rapidly, and he was unable to work. He passed away on August 16, 1964, at the age of 68 from a heart attack, a forgotten veteran of both war and film, his final days spent in quiet isolation, visited only by a handful of old colleagues.
We've got 2 about that age.
Where?
Sergeant?
All the white women are in the chapel, Doctor.
What's this girl to you?
She's my niece.
Mae Marsh played the dark-cloaked woman at the fort in The Searchers in 1956 at the age of 62, having started filming at 60. Her character, a silent and spectral figure, guards the deranged woman, embodying the grief and despair of those forever scarred by frontier violence. Once celebrated as D.W. Griffith's muse in The Birth of a Nation, 1915, and Intolerance, 1916, Marsh's career faded as silent films died, leaving her relegated to minor roles. Financial struggles plagued her as her earnings dwindled, and despite marrying Louis Lee Arms in 1918, the marriage was cold and distant, producing no children and offering little solace. She spent her later years in obscurity, appearing briefly in John Ford's films, but never reclaiming her former glory. In her final years, she battled illness and depression, haunted by a time when she had once been Hollywood royalty. She passed away on February 13, 1968, at the age of 73 from heart failure.
It's hard to believe they're white.
They ain't.
William Steele portrayed Nesby in The Searchers, 1956, at the age of 68, having started filming at 36. Nesby is an unremarkable settler, blending into the harsh landscape of the West, much like Steele himself in Hollywood, a man present but unnoticed. He built a career in westerns, often playing minor roles that never brought him fame or financial stability. No matter how many films he appeared in, he was always just another face in the background, his contributions overlooked. His personal life reflected his struggles. He never married, drifting between cheap apartments, each move marking another failed attempt to build something lasting. As he aged, roles became scarce, and loneliness crept in, leading him to find solace in alcohol. In his later years, he was placed in a nursing home, his memories fading as the industry moved on without him. On February 13, 1966, at the age of 77, he passed away in obscurity.
Here's my Bible. Hold it. Make you feel good.
Nacho Galindo played the Mexican bartender in The Searchers in 1956 at age 48, bringing a brief but meaningful presence to the film's portrayal of the American West's diversity. His character, though minor, subtly reflected the struggles of Hispanic settlers in a society that often overlooked them. Off-screen, Galindo faced similar marginalization, typecast into stereotypical roles in films like Viva Zapata, 1952, and The Magnificent Seven, 1960. Despite decades in Hollywood, he never gained real recognition, watching younger, less talented actors surpass him. His personal life was equally painful. His marriage to Maria Torres was strained by financial instability and his growing alcoholism. They had one son, Carlos, but their relationship was distant, the boy growing resentful of his father's failures. Galindo's later years were filled with desperation as roles dried up, leaving him in poverty. On June 22, 1973, he suffered a fatal heart attack at age 64, dying alone in a small Los Angeles apartment. Frank McGrath portrayed a Texas Ranger in The Searchers in 1956 at the age of 53, having started filming at 52. His character, a rugged lawman, stands as a symbol of the often brutal justice of the Old West. McGrath's career was one of hardship, working as a stuntman before landing small acting roles, often uncredited. His breakthrough came late in life with Wagon Train, but years of physical stunts left his body battered and in constant pain. He married Libby Quay Bushlin, yet their relationship was tumultuous, marked by long separations due to his work and his increasing dependence on alcohol. They never had children, a sorrow McGrath often masked with humor but never truly overcame. As his health declined, work became scarce, and he struggled financially, forced to rely on dwindling television royalties. In his last years, he suffered from heart disease and died on May 13, 1967, at the age of 64 from a massive heart attack. Chuck Hayward portrayed a man at the wedding in The Searchers in 1956 at age 36, blending into the background of the film's depiction of community and celebration. A respected stuntman, he worked on classics like The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962, and Rio Lobo, 1970, yet he remained largely uncredited, his work unseen behind the stars he made look good. The physical toll of his job was brutal. Broken bones, concussions, and lingering pain haunted him into middle age. His personal life was equally turbulent. He married twice, both ending in bitter divorces. His second wife, Susan, took their 2 children, Mark and Emily, and cut off contact. By the 1980s, his body was failing, and he lived in near isolation, relying on painkillers and alcohol. His final years were spent in quiet agony, his legacy unrecognized by the industry he sacrificed himself for. On February 23, 1998, he died at age 78, suffering a stroke that left him unresponsive for days before he passed. Chuck Roberson played a Texas Ranger at the wedding in The Searchers, 1956, at the age of 37, having started filming at 36. His character represents the thin line of law and order in the violent frontier, but like many in the film, he is ultimately powerless against the harsh realities of the West. Roberson was one of Hollywood's most reliable stuntmen, often doubling for John Wayne, yet his work remained largely uncredited. Despite his contributions to countless westerns, he struggled to gain recognition as an actor, always overshadowed by the stars he risked his life for. His personal life was marked by instability, 2 failed marriages, long absences from home, and a daughter with whom he had little contact. The years of performing dangerous stunts took a severe toll on his body, leaving him with chronic pain and forcing him to rely on painkillers and alcohol. As Hollywood moved on, he was left behind, struggling financially and battling declining health. He died on June 8, 1988, at the age of 69 due to heart failure. Carmen D'Antonio portrayed Carmen in The Searchers, 1956, at the age of 45, a minor role that reflected her real-life struggles as a performer relegated to the background. She had talent, grace, and ambition, but Hollywood's rigid beauty standards and racial typecasting confined her to limited roles. She worked primarily as a dancer and background actress, never achieving the recognition she longed for. Her personal life was no less tragic. She endured a turbulent marriage that ended in divorce, leaving her emotionally and financially drained. She never remarried and had no children, struggling to find stability as roles became scarcer. As she aged, Hollywood's indifference deepened, and she found herself forgotten, working menial jobs just to survive. Her later years were spent in quiet obscurity, her name erased from the industry she had dedicated her life to. On February 9, 1986, she passed away at the age of 74, slipping away unnoticed, another casualty of a town that only valued youth and fame. Who is your favorite character from The Searchers? How do you feel knowing that some of the actors have passed away? Don't hesitate to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this content, please remember to like, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss future videos. Thank you so much.